Welcome back to Snapping Towels. I'm Cam Williams, joined by my partner Kyle Foote for episode 15, the post-selection Sunday edition of Snapping Towels. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, and there's gonna be a lot to talk about. A lot of people upset about what happened on Sunday night in the selection show, but I think every team kind of chose their destiny at this point, and you can't be too mad at a committee that's just trying to make a calculated decision.
Definitely agree with that. Before we get into who didn't make it, who made it, and why, let's just shoot it right to an interview of a stud Patriot League attackman who will be playing in the NCAA tournament this weekend in a rematch against Princeton. Snapping Towels favorite Timmy Ley. Joining us is all Patriot League and Patriot League champion senior attackman for the BU Terriers, Timmy Ley. Timmy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh yeah, well, I'll start off. Just a question we kind of ask all the guests because it's always an interesting origin story. Tell us about how you started playing the game, where you're from, and kind of how you grew to love it.
Yeah, so I grew up on Massapequa, on Long Island. I started playing around kindergarten. My older brother played, and I kind of mimicked a lot of what he did. He was a goalie, and originally I started playing goalie a little bit just to follow in his footsteps, but I didn't like getting hit with the ball that often. And I wanted to score, so I switched to attack and midi.
Smart man.
And yeah, really just stuck with it all throughout middle school and high school, obviously, and then fortunate enough to play here at Boston.
Absolutely, and we've been you guys have been coined the Long Island Express attack. So I assume you guys all grew up together playing ball. And how'd you guys all come to choose Boston?
Yeah, so I heard that the other day. Actually, I thought it was pretty funny. Well, I know Lewis. We didn't play together growing up, but I think Coach Slippo does a good job of trying to find Long Island kids to come play in Boston. It's a new city, new spot. Yeah, so Lewis and Vince, we've played together for 3 years now, and our chemistry's just picked up throughout this season, definitely. But we all have Long Island roots, yeah.
So you didn't all play together on the club Long Island Express. It was just like the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for clarifying.
I was like, oh,
that.
that's pretty cool. They all played club ball, and all right. So that's a little bit less of a connection than I thought. But you wouldn't think it if you saw you guys play.
I think he's just talking about the announcer, the LIE.
Yeah.
Expressway. Yeah.
Of course. Right. Yeah. I mean, I imagine you guys all knew of each other, right? I mean, the Long Island lacrosse world is not very large, so I'm sure you guys were all familiar with each other.
Yeah, definitely. When they committed, I reached out to them, so I knew of them, and obviously we're best friends now. But yes, when they were coming in, it was nice to see more Long Island guys coming.
Were you guys in the same conference or high school, or what was the deal there?
Lewis played at Manhasset and Vince played at Kings Park. So I was Class A for Nassau, and I think Lewis was Class B or Class C. I can't remember. So no, I didn't really play either of them. But my senior year, we played Lewis's Manhasset team, which was a good game.
That's good.
Cool.
Action.
Yeah, very cool. Timmy, just take us back to Sunday, right? The final whistle blows. You win the first conference championship in your program's young history. The most legendary team in program history is the one you've got going on right now. You secure your first NCAA tournament berth. What emotions were you guys feeling?
Yeah, it's obviously super hard to describe. But originally, I was just so happy for the team. We put in a lot of work, obviously, to win a Patriot League title. It takes hard work, but I think just right away, I was just wow, we really did it. We all committed to this program to basically win this Patriot League tournament and get to the NCAAs for the first time. So it's just so comforting to see it all pay off. And I thought we just played really good on Sunday. So I was just so happy about that. Just leaving no doubt on the field. We knew Army was just as good as us, if not better, but just playing one of our best games, and it really paid off.
Yeah, just quickly touch on Army. You guys played them 8 or 9 days prior. You lost a 1-goal game to them. I actually said on last week's show, I thought that might help you guys, having lost that game. Really difficult to beat an Army team twice in under 10 days. Think that loss kind of helped you guys?
Yeah, I do. I think that Army week, we kind of got a little soft in practice. I think we needed a little reset. I wouldn't say it was cockiness, but it was a little bit too much confidence going into that Army game because we had beaten everyone else in the Patriot League. So I think the Army game really sort of put us back into like, all right, like we need to get better during practice this week to be able to win this thing. So it was a good loss. Obviously, no losses are really good, but I think it really reset our team, just like being like, yeah, this is what it's going to take every day to win this thing. So
No doubt. Yeah. No, it's definitely a tough tournament to win, especially when you're the regular season champ hosting. Everyone's kind of gunning for you. The play steps up. So congratulations to you guys on that. Honestly, get to experience that whole thing. And after the game, I'm guessing a lot of alumni were in town, a lot of parents trying to get after it. What was the scene like post Patriot League tourney?
yeah, it was pretty crazy. There was a bunch of alumni there. They were ready to have some fun, but we live in this like Alston town. It's kind of a little collegey, not too much, but there's definitely some regular residents. But yeah, we had a good time right after the game. We all celebrated the win, I would say, pretty well.
My insider on the ground was saying the police were being a little lenient with you guys, letting kind of everything fly. City champions, no surprise.
I was saying to my buddy this morning, I was like, yeah, I feel like on Sunday I just acted like there was no rules. Like, man, we could have gotten in some trouble, but we were fine.
You earned it.
Most definitely. So when you're not on the field ripping it up, slinging behind the backs, doing your thing, what do you like to get into? What are your hobbies, I would say?
I'm an average golfer. I'm still working on that game, but I like to golf a little bit with my brother and a couple of my buddies here. We go to Fenway a lot, hang out around there, that area. It's pretty cool. It's only about a mile away, so not too far. There's some good spots there.
You get a dog. Bleacher? You sit in the bleachers, or was it up on the Green Monster?
Yeah, I actually haven't sat there yet, but I definitely have to before I leave Boston.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned earlier your commitment process to BU and why you came to BU. Can you take us to the summer of 2018, right? You're an incoming freshman coming into play for the BU Terriers, and I think you're expecting to suit up with strong Island legend Chris Gray and program great already just as a freshman. What was it like to hear that he was transferring? Were you disappointed, or did you see that as like, okay, this is my opportunity to make an even bigger impact early on?
Right. So I played with Chris for 1 year. I was on the same attack line with him here at Boston. Okay. And then he transferred the year after. But coming in, I'll start there. It was cool. It was just like, I knew how good he was. Like, I would watch the games. And then we also had this kid named James Burr. So I knew there was two pretty electric righties already, and kind of just felt like it's going to be hard to play, but we need a lefty. So always got to have a lefty attackman. And then what did you guys say next?
When he transferred, like, I guess we were under the impression that you missed him by a year. So
our snapping talent due diligence failed us again. But no, what was it like when he transferred? When, like, you're the best player in program history, probably one of the best players all time with his points record he just set, and then he gets kind of poached, leaves, whatever it was. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, it was sad. Chris was an amazing player and great friend, so like it was sad to see him go, but we just wanted the best for him, and so ultimately he made his decision. I think after we kind of just all looked around and said those people need to step up. Obviously, it's pretty hard to replace Chris Gray, but I know you just needed more production out of the offense. It was tough for a year. I think my sophomore year was definitely hard, just trying to, fill in the role, but it's working now.
It worked out.
Oh yeah, it's working now.
So has this emergence, this season, this kind of season for the books for the Terriers? I know that BU's been knocking on the door for a while with great programs, great teams, and then for you guys in this group to finally knock it down? Are a lot of guys getting together like we're going to stick it out next year and kind of take another run at it with this extra year? Or are you guys, planning to part ways? What's kind of the plan for next year? Not looking too far ahead because we still got a lot of ball to play, but if you're just thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think right now we're focusing on Princeton, but I think a lot of people are coming back. We have most of our team coming back. Everyone's going to take their 5th year opportunity here. So it's going to be good.
I love it.
Awesome.
Keep it rolling.
Love to hear it. And I know, BU's full of great grad programs, including a great business school. So I'm sure you guys will all be taking full advantage of that. One thing we want to touch on before we get you out of here, we talk a lot about what goes on, on the field, but, something we really appreciate here on Snapping Towels is a good locker room guy. Is there anybody who maybe isn't racking up goals or assists or starts, or maybe they are, but anybody that you want to give a shout out to is just an awesome locker room guy, a real glue guy?
That's a good question. There's a bunch. Damn, who do I start with? I'd say like Jimmy O'Connell and Trav. Those are 2 freshmen who are always doing extra stuff for the team whenever we need. Got Max Gomez, who's like the king of celebrations. He's always like trying to make everyone laugh and doing crazy stuff in the locker room. Who else? Yeah, those 3 guys, like they're the best. They're always they're huge locker room guys. We got Tommy Needs. I always make fun of him. I'm like, dude, you're always in the locker room. Every time I walk in, he's in there. But
Tommy Needs, always in the locker room. I love it.
What a guy.
What's he doing in there?
I guess he's getting either extra work in or he's
snapping
homework. But yeah, he's always in there.
That's awesome. Speaking of locker room, what is the hottest song the BU Terriers either post win or pre-game that gets you guys hyped up play in the locker room?
Pre-game, I've noticed it's been a lot of Drake recently, so which I like. I'm a Drake fan, yeah. So I've been liking that. And then something we started this year was every post win we sing "Shipping Up to Boston," which is kind of like how our seniors are leaving a mark. Like when you win a game, they get to the locker room together. Everyone just screams their head off singing that song. So it's been pretty cool.
Electric. Well, we look forward to the first round matchup against Princeton. That's
the rematch.
Yeah, definitely.
That's exciting. You guys are a team to watch for sure. And dude, we really appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys.
Timmy Ley, everybody.
Shout out Timmy Ley for coming on the pod after a huge Patriot League championship win over Army. What a gut-wrenching tournament, both games. The second game didn't go down to as much the semifinal game, but that tends to happen in the Patriot League tournament. And good for the Terriers for getting past that boundary of winning the Patriot League.
Yeah, nothing but respect for what the BU Terriers have built there since the program's inception in 2014. Really a lot of fun to see those late to mid 2010s programs that had their inaugural seasons in that time period and have really kind of established themselves as staples in the Division I lacrosse landscape. So kudos to Timmy Ley and the BU Terriers.
Most definitely. Moving on.
Yeah, a lot of fun to see the conference tournaments all televised. Unfortunately, ESPN couldn't get their stuff together Friday night, and we were experiencing rolling blackouts for both Ivy League semifinal games. Very, very frustrating. Didn't do justice to the best conference in the country. Luckily, Sunday's Ivy League championship game had no production mishaps. However, it wasn't as entertaining a game as we had all hoped.
Well, before we get to the blackouts, the gong show of the production started with them labeling the game some Florida Atlantic beach volleyball game.
So, yeah, very unfortunate. Kyle and I spent 15 to 20 minutes on the phone trying to find this game.
Panic.
Many people I know actually missed the game because they thought it wasn't televised. But if you went to the ESPNU section of the ESPN Plus app, it was under, I believe, Loyola Marymount versus
Florida Atlantic
women's
University.
Beach volleyball.
Yeah.
So you really had to guess properly there in order to get some Ivy League lacrosse action on Friday night.
What?
Yeah. So just a, a great way to cap off a season full of just miserable broadcasting displays by our major sports networks. Anyway, Kyle mentioned it, a lot of comments going crazy over some of the selection committees, the tournament selection committee's results, their selections for the NCAA tournament. A lot of people expected 5 Ivies to be in. 6 ended up getting in. Harvard got in, a very controversial pick. Some people are very, very triggered that Notre Dame did not make the NCAA tournament. I have a few things to say about this. I know Kyle does too. I'm going to start us off here. And this is coming from somebody that has been rooting for Notre Dame all year, is a Kevin Corrigan fan, and thinks that they are one of the few teams in the country who can give the Maryland Terrapins a good game. I wanted Notre Dame to be in the NCAA tournament. Their game against Duke was wildly entertaining. You felt like you were watching 2 Final Four caliber teams duke it out, in the final weekend of the year, final weekend of the regular season, that is. However, the system is what it is. Is the system broken? Probably. But Kevin Corrigan and his coaching staff knew what the system was when they were putting this schedule together. And to just give you a little bit of a juxtaposition here, Duke had played 7 games before March 1st. Notre Dame played 12 games total. I know the RPI is not a good index for college lacrosse. There aren't enough data points. It's not like basketball where you have 30 to 40 games. But RPI, strength of schedule, quality wins, and bad losses are the criteria that the tournament committee uses to select the teams that get to play in the NCAA tournament, right? The teams that get to compete for a national championship. I feel bad for Notre Dame's players. I feel bad for their fans. But this is 100% on Kevin Corrigan. He only scheduled 12 total games. To me,
one being Detroit Mercy too.
Right. To me, this just reeks of ACC arrogance. The feeling of it doesn't matter how many games we schedule. We're guaranteed to have the toughest schedule in the country, and we're going to win 3 of these ACC games, and that's going to guarantee us a bid. Well, guess what? The ACC had a down year. The Ivy League had an insane year, and you don't have an ACC tournament anymore and an only 5-team conference. And they had 0 wins over tournament teams. Harvard had 3 wins over tournament teams. And, Harvard's losses to Cornell, Penn, Yale, and Ohio State are all tournament losses. Notre Dame lost to Ohio State. That's another team people said Notre Dame should be in over. If you take care of business in Columbus on March 12th, you're in the tournament. But I'm sorry, Notre Dame fans and Duke fans, both teams are definitely good enough to be in the tournament. I think both teams could be Final Four contenders, but on paper, and that's all that matters, unfortunately, in our game at this point in time, I think the system will be changed after this year. I really do. And I feel sorry that this year's Notre Dame and Duke teams were the sacrificial lambs to enforce that change, but you didn't earn it. That's all I have to say. That was a lot. I mean, those are my thoughts.
No, those are great. I mean, I agree fully. We've talked about this at length, so it's no surprise there. Ohio State kind of being the kicker. They pick up a win versus Harvard, and they beat Ohio State early in the year. Oh yeah, sorry, no, Ohio State beat Notre Dame early in the year. Notre Dame scheduled no Ivy League opponents and 1 Big Ten. And then the rest, you kind of have Detroit Mercy, Marquette. Those are kind of fluff games. And then you have an all ACC schedule, which you're losing to the 1 team, Virginia, that did make it. And then you get the rest of them and Ohio State also smoked UNC. So that win means nothing. It's just, scheduling. It's losing that 3-game stretch early in the season where they were not playing good lacrosse. We were kind of concerned. They definitely picked it up towards the back half of the year, but losing to Maryland in a tight game and then dropping one against Ohio State, and before that whole run, losing a bad one to Georgetown. It was kind of like their backs were against the wall to start, and them not scheduling any Patriot League quality wins, even a BU or a Army or a Loyola on the schedule, or even a CAA team that picks up some out of conference wins.
Right, a Delaware, which Duke scheduled. Duke scheduled Delaware.
Duke schedules everyone, and like that gave them a shot to even lose this game and get into the tournament. So this Duke Notre Dame game that took place on Saturday. Yeah, so I mean, people are freaking out, but I'm like, I don't understand the what was the ACC's record out of conference?
It was not good. I don't have it, right in front of me. It was unimpressive. And as Kyle mentioned, that Georgetown loss, you look at their schedule, you say, oh, they lost to Georgetown 16-11. That could have been a battle. They were down 11-1 in that game. All that being said, I do believe the back half of the season that Notre Dame put together was very, very impressive. And they proved that they on the field belong in the NCAA tournament. But we all know the rules. We know the system in place. I do think this could end up being a good thing for the game. I think we have to get rid of the RPI. It just doesn't apply to lacrosse. There aren't enough data points. Not enough games are played. But sorry, Irish fans, you didn't earn it given the current criteria.
I also think it's a bummer how they only schedule this many games. Also, because we saw like a record being said about Pat Cavanaugh's assist total. It was 39.
It was shocking. Kyle and I were on the phone, and he set the single season Notre Dame assist record in the 30s, and I just thought, really? Some kid at Notre Dame didn't have 40 or 50 assists at one point. And I guess that means historically Corrigan hasn't scheduled a lot of games. But, with no ACC tournament, you have no choice but to add 2 to 4 more games to your schedule. Make 2 of those tough games and 2 of them powder puffs. But the current schedule as they have it is just unacceptable. And it doesn't leave any room for error for the kids, right? They have to go, they're 8-4. They have to go 10-2 to make it. So it's just, it's unfortunate.
And then
for
Duke,
the kids.
the people wanted Duke in. I think it was on Saturday, kind of coined the game to get in, Notre Dame versus Duke. So Duke probably thought they didn't have a chance even after the Notre Dame loss, but losing to Cuse, Loyola, who had a down year, Penn and Jacksonville, along with that Notre Dame at the end of the year, Notre Dame kind of towards the back end of their year, just kind of relying on the ACC out of conference dominance, and didn't happen this year.
In Duke's defense, sorry to interrupt. In Duke's defense, they scheduled a lot of games, and traditionally, that Denver win would have been more meaningful.
Same with the Carolina win.
Yeah, right. All the ACC wins would have been more meaningful. I think that Denver had a regular Denver year, I think that win maybe could have catapulted Duke into the tournament. But that Jacksonville loss, this show has been higher on the fins than any show in the country. That's for darn sure. But Jacksonville ultimately not making the NCAA tournament makes that a bad loss. They lost to Penn. Lost to Loyola, that's a bad loss. The Cuse loss, as Kyle mentioned, is a bad loss. And to go 0-2 against
it's probably the worst loss.
It is the worst loss. And to go 0-2 against Notre Dame, who the tournament committee didn't deem a tournament team, that's your season right there. So
granted, with that being said, do I think that Notre Dame could go to Harvard tomorrow and beat them by 3 or more goals? Yes, 100%. It's interesting how this RPI and the schedule and kind of when teams are hot get in. I think even Notre Dame at the start of the year or at the end of the year would beat Harvard. And that's just my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with, what we've seen. I think they're more talented. I think their goal play is unbelievable with an All-American.
Liam Eneman might be the best player in the country. On any given Sunday, I think he is. He's
ridiculous.
He's very impressive.
So that's why I don't love having 6 Ivies in. I get it. I think they accounted for Harvard's close losses maybe a little too much, even though they had an impressive year. They lost to Ohio State, lost to Cornell, lost to Penn, lost to Yale. So
in some burners of games to, just to give them a little
yeah,
bit of credit. Yeah.
7-6 win versus Colgate. I mean, it's interesting. It's not. I'm not saying Harvard didn't deserve it because they put on a great year. I just think, and then especially them being cognizant of all these Ivies getting in. They didn't schedule any of the Ivies playing each other in the first round of the tournament, so it's kind of like puts other teams that should be a home game maybe on the road, and it's kind of weird how they did that.
So I'm going to say two things, and that's Kyle just brought up, I think, one of the best points you could possibly bring up right now, and one that's incredibly overlooked. Everybody's talking about Notre Dame and Duke not getting in, but what Kyle just said is the most poignant thing, I think. I'll get to that in a second. Just to touch again on the tournament selection committee's criteria. Everybody has solutions as to, or everybody has suggestions. You get rid of this, but we got to talk about what needs to be included. The eye test and context needs to be a thing here. And the college football playoff committee, when they're selecting the college football playoff, a few years ago, Trevor Lawrence missed a game with COVID. I believe Clemson lost that game.
BC.
The committee essentially threw that game out because the question is not, does Clemson without Trevor Lawrence belong in the college football playoff? Trevor Lawrence is going to be suiting up for them for the college football playoff, and we need to treat this as such. Just an example, different sport. Eye test and context needs to be taken into account. And if you ask me, and I've been a massive Ivy League homer all year, call myself a homer. I didn't go to an Ivy League school, but I've been on the Ivy League all year long. If you're just talking eye tests, and I know Brown hosted the tournament, and I know we have some Brown listeners. If you're just talking eye test, I think 4 Ivies should have gotten in, and that would be Penn, Cornell, Yale, and Princeton. Princeton didn't even make the Ivy League tournament, and I believe that. And Brown hosted it. I love what Brown and Harvard have going in Cambridge and Providence, respectively, and I think that they have great futures in the near future. But Duke and Notre Dame eye tests should be in over Harvard, Brown, and Ohio State. So 100%. Eye tests and context needs to be taken into account. An Ohio State loss in February shouldn't carry as much weight as 2 recent Duke wins for Notre Dame, or a recent Virginia win for Duke. So I think that's one area where we can improve our game's NCAA tournament selection process. The second thing I want to touch on is what Kyle brought up, which is an excellent point, is if you're going to get 6 of these Ivies in, which I was fine with 5, 6 seems like a lot, but you know what? On paper, they earned it. If you're going to put 6 in there, the bottom 2 of those 6 should be playing each other, because you're putting Maryland, who's putting together a historic season. And if anyone in the history of lacrosse has earned a cakewalk to the Final Four, it's the Maryland Terrapins. But you're putting Maryland in a really tough position because you put Virginia on the road at Brown. I'm going to predict Virginia's going to win the game. We'll get to our predictions later, but if all things go as planned, I think Virginia's going to win that game. And
Brown has a home game with a loss to Carolina, Harvard, UMass, Princeton, and Penn.
You're going to have most likely Maryland playing Virginia in the second round in the quarterfinal game, when Virginia is one of the only 3 to 4 teams in the country that really have a shot against Maryland if they're healthy and if they show up and play well. So it's the seating arrangement and who's traveling to who and who's not playing each other is very important. 2 Ivies should have been playing each other. And to me, Brown showed that, kind of came back down to earth this weekend. I think Brown's a good team. I like the Brown Bears. I think they're good enough to be an NCAA tournament team. I don't think when push comes to shove that, they're better than Duke and Notre Dame, obviously. But Brown caught lightning in a bottle earlier in the year with Terrio becoming an absolute brick wall between the pipes. And, their transition game was hot. They caught a couple Ivy League teams on off weekends, and they rally off the most impressive 3-game stretch in the country this year in beating Penn, Yale, and Cornell back to back to back.
At Penn,
but they kind of
and
came
at
down
Cornell.
they kind of came back down to earth this weekend.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
No, absolutely. I think, we definitely didn't predict the Brown Bears were gonna win the Ivy League as they hosted. There was 3 regular season champions in the Ivy League. Yeah, I think if you take out Ohio State and Harvard and replace them with Duke and Notre Dame, it's more fireworks, but we'll see how it plays out.
One thing to keep an eye on are the ratings of these games, because Duke and Notre Dame are 2 of the largest college lacrosse fan bases.
I hope we see them. I don't know.
Something to keep an eye on.
I think lacrosse will still show out.
It'll be fine. And I'm happy for these Ivy League kids. They got robbed of last year's season, and they showed out all year. And prove they're the best conference in the country. So the rest is history.
Amen. Let's get into actually, before we get into the tournament, let's talk about our players of the weekend.
Yeah. So surprise, surprise, I'm going with an Ivy Leaguer here. Pat Birkinshaw, the goalie for Penn.
Yes.
Absolutely went off this weekend. To me, he was the difference in these games. He had 20 saves against Brown in the semifinal and 16 saves in the championship against Yale. Even if he has a decent day with 9 to 12 saves, these games are very, very different. So the kid stood on his head all weekend. Got to give him love. The Ivy League defensive play and goalie play has been up and down this year. And for Pat Birkinshaw to come into Stevenson Field, on the road as the 4th seed in this tournament and really take it over is very, very impressive.
Yeah, he had a hell of a weekend, and was kind of the brick wall that Penn needed. I'm going with Jake Taylor. He's been my breakout player before when he first popped on the scene, when he first got his opportunity, and he's still doing it. I wish Notre Dame was in the tournament personally, and this is one of the reasons why, because I think he had a lot more to contribute this year. He had 6 goals off 8 shots, shooting the ball at a high clip, throwing it behind his back, riding, transition. It was all there for Jake Taylor, and he led the Irish at home to a huge comeback win over Duke, and kind of that we thought win and get in game. So it's a bummer his season's wrapped up early, but I'm sure we'll see him again. On to the tournament.
Yeah, he's an elite finisher. He's an elite finisher and has a very bright future in South Bend. Also, would be difficult to drop in a better fit with the Kavanaugh brothers as well. So really, he's an excellent player and has a great future. But yes, enough about last weekend. Enough about Duke and Notre Dame. We are on to the next. This NCAA tournament should be full of fireworks.
Let's talk playing games quick. We'll start on the left side of the bracket. All Manhattan versus Vermont. What are you thinking?
I'm taking the Vermont Catamounts. Kyle and I have had a soft spot for the Catamounts all year. I think in January we both predicted them as a potential dark horse team not to sleep on. They're no easy out. They, in my opinion, have an honorable mention level goaltender in Ryan Cornell. I know Kyle agrees with that as well. And I just think Vermont has more players than Manhattan at this point.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Kyle Cornell. He's hot. They steamrolled through the American East. But the Jaspers have had a great year, and they won their conference pretty upright as well. So I think it might be a little closer game than people think, but one I'm excited for. I think the Mounts are gonna take care of business. On to Delaware, Robbie Moe. I know who you're picking.
Yeah, you know who I'm picking. All right, another team that I tagged as a sleeper team this year. The Delaware Blue Hens are loaded on offense. They've got Canadians everywhere, guys who can really, really bury the biscuit. JP Ward, Mike Robinson, Ty Kurtz at attack is quite the trio. I know Robert Morris can score as well. I caught the second half of their ASUN championship game against Utah. They've got some real players on offense as well. I think this has a chance to be a really high scoring, close game, but I think Delaware edges them out.
Yeah, I think Robert Morris has a good thing going on attack with Taggart, Clark, and Corson Keeley. But I think Delaware's gonna be a little too much to handle for the Pirates. Yeah, I'm taking Delaware as well.
So those two games, those play-in games, go to the winner of Vermont Manhattan plays Maryland.
Correct.
I think we know what's going to go down in College Park once either the Catamounts or the Jaspers make their way there. Kyle, what are you seeing from those matchups, potential matchups?
I would be nervous whoever's walking into Maryland Stadium to play them first round. That's just kind of a recipe for disaster. But you see, I think the Catamounts have, I believe it was last year, maybe the year before, they went into Bird Stadium for the first round and gave them a good fight for a couple quarters.
Yep.
But it wasn't a game. It was over at halftime once Maryland came out of the locker room for the second time. And then I think who does Delaware Robbie Morris? Oh, Georgetown. So
the Hoyas. Yeah,
I think that's going to be kind of over before it starts as well. I hope they at least give them 2 quarters of a good game.
Yeah, I think Delaware has a chance to make that interesting. I do not see them ultimately coming out on top. Georgetown's got too many players. But I think Delaware can score with anybody and score on anybody. I know they haven't seen the likes of Will Bowen, and Georgetown's goalie's name is escaping me. I know Kyle can hook that up.
Owen
McElroy. Owen McElroy is disgusting. Possibly the best goalie in the country. Liam Eneman, Mike
first team
Adler.
All-American last year. I mean, he's in the tournament. He'll probably be it again this year.
Yeah, he likely will be a first-team All-American goaltender. So Delaware, I don't think, has quite seen that level of play on the defensive end. They did play Duke earlier this year and put up some goals on them. I think Delaware could make this interesting for 3 quarters, but 4 quarters of play, Georgetown's depth is going to really shine through.
Yeah, and then we move down the left side of the bracket to see who plays Maryland. We get to Brown, Virginia. A historic matchup. I wish it was at Virginia, but we're playing it at an Ivy. No surprise.
Yeah, I guess
I don't think Virginia necessarily earned a home game with their losses they had this year and kind of their lack in schedule late in the year. I don't think they played really anyone good, but
and getting trounced by Maryland.
Yeah,
they got trounced. It is an interesting, putting Virginia on the road against Brown seems a bit interesting, and seems honestly like the tournament committee is trying to manufacture a storyline here. Lars going back to Brown to play at Brown. Interestingly enough, in 2020, the last game that the Brown Bears played, they beat Virginia. So there's these two programs are not unfamiliar with each other. Obviously, Lars is incredibly familiar with them. I'm sure John Daly, head coach of Brown, is more than familiar with the Wahoos. I don't think Virginia did earn a host game this year. I do think it's interesting they're going to Brown. I think Virginia wins this game by 5 or 6 goals. I really do believe Brown has come back down to earth. Connor Terrio is a great goaltender, but he can't keep up the level of play he was in the middle of the year. And also, Brown cannot overcome the loss of Darian Cook, arguably their best attackman. Yeah. Huge loss 4 or 5 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, tore his ACL. They really need that elite scoring threat alongside Antonelli, and the other attackman's name is escaping me as well. But without Darian Cook, I don't think they had the firepower.
Devin McLean.
Devin McClain's very, very good player. All three of them are very good. And the fourth attackman has stepped in and done a nice job, but he's not Darian Cook, and they don't have the firepower to keep up with a fresh UVA squad.
No, I agree with you fully. I think Virginia's hungry. They haven't been in the limelight as they usually are recently down the stretch. I think they're clicking at the right time. Jeff Connors has really stepped into a huge role, which he hadn't been earlier in the year. I think Virginia's depth has grown, whereas Brown's has kind of regressed in a way. I think Virginia's too athletic up and down the field. And then you have Connor Schellenberger in the playoffs. I don't see anyone being able to guard him for
Nobody on Brown can stay with.
And then you have Matt Moore, who's likely to be drafted 1 or 2 in the pro draft tonight. So trying to stop them on their last run together is going to be quite the task. Moving on to Cornell v. Ohio State on the other side of the bracket, who would inevitably play Georgetown. Who are you thinking? This is going to be probably the closest game of the games we've talked about so far.
Definitely has the potential to be. I think this is going to be a very good game. Very, very physical. Ohio State has 2 elite players in Jackson Reed and Jack Kelly. And just two pros down on offense. And Cornell, we know, is kind of loaded with a deep scoring arsenal. This is actually a rematch of a 2008 NCAA tournament game. Cornell was, I think, the number 2 seed. Ohio State went in there on the road and spanked them by double-digit goals. Massive upset. Just a game that kind of sticks out in my memory on the AstroTurf at Cornell. But guys like Ricky Pages, Buchanan, Joel Delgarno for the Buckeyes really, really going off. Stephen Schroeder and Cage kind of establishing the Buckeyes as a program to be reckoned with on the national stage. I think the Buckeyes are going to come in here swinging. They've played a lot of big-time games this year against a lot of tournament teams. Against the likes of Maryland, Rutgers, Harvard. They beat Notre Dame. It's obviously not a tournament team, but we know how good they are. Ohio State's a battle-tested squad who's not going to go away lightly, but I see Coach Busick and the Cornell Big Red coming out on top here. Big game from John Piatelli is what I'm eyeing.
Yeah, he's eyeing up 70 points, which is insane. And same with Curse. He's right on the doorstep as well. These teams played in March, which no one's really talking about.
I just brought up a 2008 game, and they played in March of 2022.
They played Cornell bested them by 3. It was a 14-11 ball game. It was at Cornell early in the year that had to be cold. I think Ohio State's gotten better, but I think this is a Cornell win. I think this is a signature at home. I think Cornell's defense is really finding its stride with the win over Princeton. Which was at Princeton, I believe, right before the Ivy League tournament.
Correct.
But yeah, I see them taking this game at home. I think their offense is clicking. I like their middies in transition better than Ohio State's. I don't think Ohio State gets up and down the field that well. We'll see, but I think Cornell could really take advantage of their short sticks, which happened in the first matchup. As long as Cornell doesn't short stick Jack Myers.
I called him Jack Kelly earlier. I knew I was wrong. Myers.
As long as they don't short stick Jack Myers, I think they'll be in pretty good hands. With Erlin in tournament time, I think he's going to show up, have a big day at home as well. Down to the other side of the bracket for the quarters, the first round games, we got our boy Timmy Ley playing a high-powered Princeton offense, but a very, very questionable Princeton defense. Who do we see here?
This has a chance to be, I think, the highest scoring game in the NCAA tournament this year. We've seen Princeton put up goals on literally everybody, high teens, low 20s, you name it. Unfortunately, the other side of the ball seems to give up similar numbers each and every time out. This BU offense is loaded, right? The Long Island Express on attack is kind of a three-headed monster with, Vinny D'Alto, Timmy Ley, and Luis Perfetto all have at least 65 points. D'Alto and Ley have 74 and 75 respectively. So those kids are no stranger to burying the biscuit in all different ways. They also have some really nice midfielders, some very crafty midfielders that complement those kids very, very well. A lot of Ivy League people are probably thinking Princeton's going to run away with this one. I think Princeton wins this game 19-17.
Yeah, these teams played in April, and it wasn't high scoring. It was 12-7. I don't know what rainstorm was rolling through that day, but I can go with Cam here. I think this is going to be high scoring. I think both these offenses are really feeling themselves. I see Boston taking them by surprise. I think Princeton's been lacking by their defense the whole year. I think it's the upset the tournament needs. I think if Boston wins that game earlier in the year, they're hosting this game. I think it's a little different situation.
Agreed. I think that's a great point. One thing that's really interesting to note here, we mentioned that the tournament committee was unwilling to saddle an Ivy League rematch in the first round, but we just went through two rematches, Cornell, Ohio State, and BU Princeton. I'm not sure why, they thought it was appropriate to set up these rematches, but not at least
especially
one
because
Ivy League
everyone
rematch.
it was like one big jumble. You could throw them all up, and except for Georgetown and Maryland, it really didn't matter where they landed. So
yeah,
that's where I'm like, why do you, but whatever, what's done is done. Moving on. Other side of the bracket, Rutgers, Harvard.
I'm going with Harvard.
I like that. I think this is going to be a very close game in New Jersey. I'm going with Rutgers. I think they kind of rolled through the Big Ten easy before Maryland. Obviously,
Aside from Maryland, yeah.
That's a tough team to get past, but I think their defense is a lot better than Harvard's. Harvard is known to put up numbers and give numbers. I think Harvard struggled against Ohio State earlier in their year. I think if you struggle with Ohio State, you're definitely going to struggle with Rutgers. I think Rutgers has a lot of good pieces, and they're jonesing to make a run to probably to a Final Four.
I like Rutgers. I like the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. I chose them earlier this year as a sleeper Final Four pick. I think this is a tough matchup for them. And Kyle, you mentioned the Ohio State loss for Harvard. Again, I think we need to take context and kind of recency bias into account here. That was a February 26th game in Jacksonville, Florida. I just think neutral site, second game of the year, February lacrosse. It's going to be messy. So I don't put a lot
of young kids playing for Harvard.
Exactly. Harvard's the youngest team in this tournament. I don't put a lot of stock in that game. Harvard's two freshman attackmen, Sam King and Miles Bacchus, are disgusting alongside senior Austin Madronic. Really, really excellent attack line. I think this will be a high scoring game as well. I know Rutgers has elite athletes on offense. Bartolo, Ronan Jacoby, just to name a few. But I think Harvard is going to have a chip on their shoulder. Everybody's saying they shouldn't be in. I think Harvard's going to come out on top here.
I love it. I love a good upset. Back to the other side of the tournament, Yale St. Joseph's having an insane year.
This is an upset alert. I think Yale is on upset alert here.
Coming from the Ivy League specialist.
I think they're on upset alert, but I'm going to stay true to my brand here. I'm going to go with the Yale Bulldogs. I think this is going to be a really high scoring game. St. Joe's just 2 weeks ago was up 10-5 on Penn in the fourth quarter. And Penn was able to scratch and claw their way back to an overtime win there in Philly. I think St. Joe's is really good. We talked to Sam Hanley last week and we were snapping it around off air, and he couldn't couldn't speak more highly of the St. Joe's team this year. He said they're excellent, and whoever draws them in the first round could be in trouble. I've watched a little bit of St. Joe's. I watched their full game against Delaware earlier in the year. I think St. Joe's has a real chance to upset the Yale Bulldogs, but I think Yale comes out on top in a high-scoring game, 16-14.
Definitely, there's a senior laden team for sure down there in Philly. I'm going with St. Joe's. I'm gonna pick the upset.
I love it.
I think Andy Shea's gonna be dialed in. Yale's a hell of a stadium, first round. That place is gonna be jumping, but I think St. Joe's takes them. I think it's a battle-tested team. No, and then we either have a Ivy League quarterfinal matchup, but we could potentially have a Ivy League quarterfinal in
aside from Maryland and Georgetown.
Yeah, but they're on the other side.
They're on the opposite ends.
Yeah, they're on the opposite ends, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm looking up and down at it, but yeah, that'd be insane if both sides, if the opposite sides were both Ivy League matchups. But no, it's not going to happen because I'm going with St. Joe's. But that's all for the first round. We just buzzed through.
You're missing one key game that has two friends of the pod playing in the game.
Correct.
You got the Penn Quakers hosting the Richmond Spiders. Fans of both programs. Kyle, what are you feeling for that final first round
this
game?
one's hurt. This one hurts. Dalton Young was the man and came on earlier in the show right after their Virginia upset. So they have weapons. They can do it. I think Penn is on a mission. They played possessed in that Ivy League championship, being ranked the lowest in the tournament and coming out with the victory. I think it was theirs to honestly host and win the regular season. As we've been saying on Snapping Towels, we think they're the best team in the Ivy League. I think Penn takes care of business. They roll on to maybe meet Harvard in the quarterfinals.
I agree. I think Penn wins this game. I don't think going away, but I don't think it's going to be particularly close once we get into the late stages of the fourth quarter. I just think that they have more good players, and their good players are significantly better than Richmond's good players. And that was kind of similar to what I saw against Brown. I don't think Penn has significantly more good players than Brown. I do think their good players are significantly better than Brown's good players. Penn has some pros on their roster. Obviously everybody knows about Sam Hanley, but BJ Farrar is an absolute demon between the lines. Just a pest, a guy as a former midfielder, I would just hate to be playing against. Always in your hands. Seems like he comes out of every ground ball scrum with the ball and then is shot out of a cannon to start a fast break. Guys like that, guys like Pat Birkinshaw in the cage. A guy that's really come on for the Penn Quakers is number 9, Pedard. Kind of Sam Hanley light almost, just as big, but not quite as good in every area.
And Gergar. He's filling up the stat sheet.
Obviously, Gergar is disgusting. Jack Schultz has really come on. Luke Diajacobi has come on. People were kind of railing on Penn's depth. Penn's second midfield really showed up in the Ivy League tournament. One thing I will say, I still think they're safe to beat this Richmond Spiders team. You got fire sirens in the back, fire truck sirens. Gotta love New York.
FDNY.
Yeah, the loss of Tynan Walsh, number 60, their freshman attackman, who's really come on in the back half of the year. I haven't heard anything definitive, but from the looks of it, the injury did not look good. With 4 minutes left to play in the Ivy League championship game, he hurt his knee, was on crutches after the game. That's a big loss. That's something to keep an eye on moving through the NCAA tournament. Also, Pedard went down at the end of the game. I think it didn't seem nearly as serious as Tynan Walsh's injury, but Penn's health is something to keep an eye on for sure.
And with that, that's the first round. You heard it here first. We'll be calling the games all through the tournament.
Yeah. Kyle, you mentioned it earlier. I think everybody knows the answer to this now, but I was going to ask you, What's your most likely upset from the weekend? But just give us shed a little more light on it.
I think the upset's coming in Connecticut when St. Joe's beats Yale. I think these senior teams have a lot of chemistry. They're dangerous, and talking to Sam Hanley about this group a couple weeks ago, and then what they did in their league play just kind of cemented everything he was saying. If you're Yale and Yale could kind of let off the gas and kind of overlook St. Joe's, I think that's when it happens.
Yale also is pretty young, not as young as Harvard, but they've got some freshmen running out there. And it's a different level of ball heading into the NCAA tournament. Everything's moving a little bit faster. And as Kyle mentioned,
A little louder.
Yeah, exactly. And every possession just feels very, very important. And as Kyle mentioned, St. Joe's is a senior laden team filled with veterans, filled with fifth years. They're going to be more than comfortable in this game against the Yale Bulldogs. Whereas, we know that Yale has some veterans who have played in a national championship game, played in a couple Final Fours, and Yale has been a powerhouse for the last 6 or 7 years. But a lot of those guys are gone. And, you got Leo Johnson's, Thomas Bragg, I believe, is a younger. Chris Lyons, I believe, is a freshman. You got a lot of young pups. I'm still going with the Bulldogs, but I don't hate Kyle's upset pick there.
Who do you got?
I mentioned it earlier. I think Harvard beats Rutgers. I think that, kind of going against what I just said, Harvard's the youngest team in the tournament. I think Harvard's going to go out there with absolutely nothing to lose. Nobody wants them in. Nobody thinks they should be in. They're going to have a chip on their shoulders. I think all these kids feel like we're going to be around for the next 3 or 4 years. Like, we're going to be here. Like, let's sling it, right? Let's let it fly. Whereas Rutgers, I think, could be a little bit tighter. They got a lot of 4th and 5th year guys. They've been snubbed a lot in the tournament. They're not as familiar with the tournament. Not that Harvard's super familiar, but I just think it's a huge deal for Rutgers after being snubbed all those years. And you got all these transfers coming in and making an impact. I think they could be a little bit tight, whereas Harvard's going to be loosey-goosey, letting it fly.
I love it. Yeah. No, I think that's a good pick. I picked Rutgers to kind of hold strong. They're kind of the battle-tested Big Ten. A lot of seniors. Harvard's got 5 freshmen that score on the offensive zone. Rutgers might have 1 kid who might get a point, but other than that, all their points are coming from seniors and one junior. Transfers. Yeah, exactly. So, and Knobloch, he's a sophomore. He can rip it too. First team all name. But yeah, no, I'm excited for the first round. I think it's gonna be fireworks. I think the host sites are good, and it is what it is. The ACC didn't show up this year. They lost a lot of out of conference games, and that's how you find yourself with a lot of tears with these ACC riders.
One team in, and that team isn't a host. UVA is not a host.
That's the last time that happened. Hit
Pretty
us up
crazy.
At Snapping Tiles when you find that fact out.
Pretty crazy. We talk a lot about the college game. Obviously, that should be taking up probably most of our airspace at this point. But Pll Draft is upon us, and Kyle, just give me a few things we should be watching out for. Who do you think should go number 1?
It's tough. I mean, obviously the Chrome have a lot to add to their roster, a lot of retirees, a lot of bad coaching and GM moves with the last 2 years, kind of putting them in this position where they could take a pull, they need a pull, they need a tackle, and they need someone to fill in through the midfield as well, and the specialty positions. With Galloway retiring, you could use a goalie, so it's really a toss-up. They could pick whoever they wanted, essentially being the number 1 pick. You'd like to think Chris Gray, with the leading all-time points record, is up there. Wisnauskas is going to be up there with what he did with Maryland this year, scoring consistently 7 to 10 points, along with leading the number 1 team in the country to go convincingly undefeated. So it's probably between those two guys. With Matt Moore being the third guy you could throw in there, he's probably not going to be the first pick, but he'll be in the top 3 for sure. But I think it's a great class. I think Brendan Donville will go up pretty high in the first round. Also a Snapping Tiles friend. BD 45 should go early.
It'd be interesting to see where the goalies fall and who.
I saw a quote that said it's going to be like dominoes. Like once you see one position fall, like kind of like a fantasy draft with your friends, when someone picks a quarterback, everyone picks a quarterback. And I was surprised by that quote, but I'm also not surprised because like guys are like, oh, like the truth comes out when they're like, oh, we actually do need a goalie. Like one already went. We need to get Brett Dobson before he gets scooped up quick.
That's interesting.
It was interesting, and it came from a coach. It wasn't like an outside source. It was one of the coaches was quoted saying that. Yeah, I think it's going to be fireworks. One person who I think is going to fall further than they should is a friend of the pod's Brendan Curry, and that has nothing to do with him being on the pod and a fan. I think his speed and his shooting ability with both hands. Yes, I know Cuse had a down year, had a lot to do with their goalie and defensive struggles, was not necessarily and offensive injuries. If Cuse was one of the top teams in the country, Brendan Curry's stock would be a lot higher. I think it's a different ball game. I think he
agreed. We would have seen more from him this year, heard more about him. I agree with that. I actually think Donville's going to drop.
Yeah, I can see that
further
too.
than he should.
I mean, he's second on the best team in the country in points, convincingly. He's a knockdown shooter. If he drops and the Chaos get him, it'll just fit right into their scheme of the Canadians and how they play
be a wonderful
offense.
fit with the Chaos.
You know, I think teams need to really look now to see what happened to the Chrome with where they put all their money in this kind of old roster of yeah, you could say legends or just players from the past, depending on what era you're in, or era you grew up in. And see, okay, this guy might be on his last 2 years, 1 or 2 years. We need to start replacing his spot. And I think the Atlas might do that, scooping up the Pll from Notre Dame, who I'm blank. God damn it, I'm blanking on his name.
So am I.
Arden Cohen.
Correct.
He's a fire hydrant. I think they have Cade, they have Rexrod, and they have Durkin. But you know, Durkin's on his way
kind of the
out.
heir apparent to Durkin.
Exactly. So I think you bring him in, you challenge the old guys a little bit, you get him runs maybe at LSM because they need that. It's interesting. It's going to be a great draft. I'm curious. I'm intrigued with how it goes, and it's going to be on ESPN, whole new production. Coaches are there live. It should be a good showdown.
I think it is going to be interesting. It's going to be good to see it on ESPN. Hopefully a legit production. Not to say that ESPN is a guaranteed legit production, as we saw on Friday night. Personally, so many people love Chris Gray, and I'm one of them. Huge fan of his game. Nothing but respect for what he's done, both at BU and UNC. I like Matt Moore and Logan Wisnauskas more than Chris Gray as a PLL attackman. I think Chris Gray is going to be a great player in the PLL, possibly for a decade. I know he's all in on Lax full time. I think he could be a decade staple for the league, but in years 1 to 4 or 1 to 3, depending on, you know, just how much these guys invest in their game and in lacrosse, you know, it's always a big question with professional lacrosse. I really think Matt Moore and Logan Wisnauskas, to me, are more attractive at the pro level. I can't really put a finger on why. Not sure if it's size. I'm not 100% sure. I just think those two will handle pro polls slightly better than Chris Gray.
Yeah, I think that's been Chris Gray's story his whole career, why he's kind of under-recruited out of the island. He's been handling the polls kind of. It hasn't stopped. Right?
He's been just fine against ACC polls.
ACC polls, like you name it, he's
been just fine.
Yeah, I don't see. I think the storyline in the draft is the Atlas have 6 picks in the first 3 rounds.
With
like already
Ben Rubior went all in on youth, which is obviously the opposite of what the Chaos did. Traded away all their old dogs.
No, the Chrome.
Sorry, the Chrome.
Yeah, trade away all the young dogs to keep the old ones. The old ones getting hurt and retiring the next year to really put the Chrome, and also leaving them with just their first round pick because they were the worst team in the league. But other than that, they have no draft picks. They have 4 picks. That's it. So they've really put themselves behind an 8 ball. They need to really pick wisely and get really good, steal really good players. I think Dobson is one of those. It's hard with like kind of not knowing like which seniors are staying or transferring, that kind of thing. In a way, it's kind of a weird draft year. Obviously, the coaches know and everyone who's picking knows. But yeah, I think Brett Maker is a great pull from Maryland. I think he'll be an excellent pro.
I'm looking at the latest mock draft released by Inside Lacrosse today.
Okay.
They just have the first 2 rounds. It's a pretty defensive heavy first 2 rounds in their opinion with this mock draft. 0 goalies.
Yeah.
Which to me doesn't seem likely. An interesting guy I think to keep an eye on is Asher Nolting. I think he's going to be a good pro.
You got Ncaa, he's going to be in there.
Yep.
Brendan Nickturn, he racked up a boatload of points at Army, being arguably their best player in program history. So there's a lot of interesting players coming out of college this year. There's no lack in talent. It's just if these teams can pick the right piece for their puzzle, and every team kind of has their different sauce. The Whipsnakes pick 7 usually pick Maryland players, and it's
worked out for them.
It's worked out for Maryland and the Whipsnakes, but we'll see if they've kind of been switching that up of late, going with other guys. We'll see what happens. Yeah, there's good short stick D middies. I'm seeing there's a lot of, it's interesting. You never know what these guys pick. They all played at schools. They all coached at colleges. It's a very interesting dynamic where it's a little different than other pro sports, I'd say.
Very relationship based. Who's familiar with who's either coached someone in the past or has a very good relationship with their current college coach.
Yeah. It's also going to be ripped up by Cotter, Boyle, and Paul Kark. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's must-watch television. That is absolute must-watch TV. Yeah, so it should be interesting. I'm excited. Couldn't be more excited for the PLL this summer. Really interested to see how these rookies, the impact that these rookies make this summer. Last summer was honestly seemed like the lead storyline was the impact that the rookie class was making.
As it should be. I'm a proponent for this league really investing in the youth and
Agreed.
Continuing these players coming out of college to play and get runs. I mean, we all know what a year out of college does, and the program's only so many months in the summer. It's an interesting kind of way that the ball falls, but we'll see emergence from hopefully Will Perry, a UNC midfielder that's on the Whipsnakes, who'll finally get some touches with Drew Snyder retiring. So you see the turnover happening. I think it's happening slower than I would like, but as long as it's happening, I think it's there for a better ball.
For sure. Will be interesting to watch unfold on ESPN, the worldwide leader of sports. That will do it for episode 15. I'm Cam Williams, joined by my partner, as always, Kyle Foote. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and can't wait to be back next week to discuss the first round of the NCAA tournament and the future.